What's going on, guys? In the last episode of Strange Garage, you guys saw me rip the engine out of my Bayliner Capri and another engine out of a Ford Ranger. Well, today, you're going to see me get the Ford Ranger engine running in the Bayliner with EFI. Check it out. Before I can even think about putting everything back together, I need to fabricate up a couple of exhaust manifold gaskets. Now, of course, you're able to order these online and they're not very expensive, but I'm not very good at planning ahead, so I'm just going to buy the gasket material and throw them on the CNC machine. On the surface, it might not seem like I'm actually saving any money, but the gasket material was only $7, and the gaskets themselves would have been about $15 each, and I needed more than one of them. So I'm saving a little bit of money, but I got to pay for it with my time. Once I get the gaskets made up, before I can put the manifold on, I need to remove the extra long studs that go into the manifold out of the bad engine and then put them into the new engine so I can actually install the manifold. So this is where things start getting a little bit sad and a little bit annoying. So this alternator came off of the truck, this manifold came off the boat, so for me to even get this manifold on here, I had to cut the alternator bracket. So it was a bowling ball grip, and now it's just a 2-post, so it's obviously going to be weaker. We have to figure something out over here. Not that big of a deal to me, honestly. The bigger deal is this guy, I guess you'd call it a coolant manifold. It's supposed to go directly into the exhaust manifold because the coolant runs through it. I think that's right. But it's not going to work because I can't get the hose up into that bottom, so I'm going to have to relocate that. I'm not too worried about it, but it's just one more thing I have to figure out. And then we're going to go ahead and blast one of these fittings because it was going, on the carbureted version, it was going to the intake manifold. On this intake manifold, there's just a plug in that spot, so it's something we're not going to deal with. But a little bit of legwork still, unfortunately. So just for the record, I recognize the fact that I'm not a master fabricator, and it's extremely difficult to weld cast metal, but I was having pretty good luck by putting a blowtorch directly into the manifold, keeping it nice and hot while I was welding it up, and that helped prevent the metal from cracking. Alright, so we have our modified fitting here, which is attached to what I would call the equivalent of a thermostat housing, except for this boat doesn't have a thermostat. And we found a way to get the hose up to that point. It's not very good, it's not very clean, but it does work. Now I know some of you are probably thinking that this is absolutely ridiculous. There's a piece of steel inside of this small tube, and the small tube is inside of the large tube, and so this clamp is actually holding on to steel, so it should be legit. That doesn't mean it will be, but cross your fingers. Well, it's the moment of truth. I can't prolong it anymore. I think I actually have to put this thing in here now, which hopefully I remembered everything. I'm sure I forgot something, but should be all right, I think. So the fuel setup is a bit cartoonish. So the outlet is right here. So we follow it up. And what I have is, I have a clear filter, which I'm not actually using for a filter. I'm just using it so I can see the fuel. Then we have our prime pump, and then we have our actual fuel pump. And the reason I'm doing this is because these are supposed to be submerged. But since I'm converting it to an inline, we need to get the fuel up to this before we can start cranking this, because cranking these dry is really bad for them. And then we have our actual fuel filter, and then we have our actual fuel line. So what I'm doing is I'm using these compression fittings to attach it back to itself. So all I did was I cut the line and I'm shortening it up, and then I'm using the same exact line that was originally coming out of the fuel rail for the fuel injectors, and I'm using these compression fittings to attach them. So I'm sure the question that's on a lot of your minds is, how exactly am I going to get the EFI that was designed to work in the truck to work in the boat? And as much as I would love to sit here and tell you guys that I'm some kind of genius who figures this stuff out, it's actually a hell of a lot simpler than that, because at some point in time, Ford hired very, very smart engineers to build a whole bunch of components that all go together and make the engine work in the truck. All I'm doing is I'm ripping everything out and transplanting it into the boat. Literally the entire wiring harness. And when I say the entire wiring harness, I mean it. There are still headlights attached to this wiring harness. I took everything out. When I put the engine in the boat, I transplanted that whole harness into there. And the only real modification I had to do was I had to take ground straps that were originally attached to the body, and I had to attach them to the motor, and then hook up the battery, and that's really all I did. And it ended up working out just fine. It was really that simple. And that was my plan from the very beginning, because if I were to try to wire it up just piece by piece, it would have taken forever. I would have made a lot of mistakes. And in something like this, one simple mistake can really hold you up for a long time, and all I wanted to do was avoid that, which I did. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are really upset with me for brutally murdering that truck. Now, if I'm honest with you, of course I feel guilty about it, but don't worry, because we're actually not getting rid of the truck. You are going to see that in the future on one of my projects. It actually even has a name now, which I'll share with you guys later. But once you name it, you have to keep it. So, look forward to seeing that at a later date. Alright, so we're really close to the first fire up. By no means ready to take it out onto the water, but making sure that the engine actually works the way it sits so I can start getting wires out of that harness, because right now there's way too much in there. I just got to hook up the fuel pump because I ended up cutting the wire. There's a whole lot of wire. Got to hook up the alternator, got to hook up the starter, put a ground strap on the motor, and then hook up the battery and give it a shot. We're just going to use the ignition that was originally out of the Ranger, and I purchased a push-button start just like I have in my F-150 that we can hook up, but it's not here, so we're going to work with what we got so far. All right, cross your fingers. Sounds like it's trying to me. Now we just got to get fuel going. For some reason or another, the fuel pump wasn't coming on, but that doesn't matter. We just went ahead and hot wired it, so whenever you plug the battery in, it's on. So obviously we're going to need to switch it up later, but for now, this is going to work all right. Moment of truth. You guys ready? All right, just need to run it for a second, and if it works, we're ready to pack it in. So the boat's running, so that's pretty good. It wasn't as difficult as I thought it was going to be. There's still a few finishing touches that I have to do on the exhaust and on the wiring in order to get it the way I want it. Obviously it works still, but it's not working the way I want it to, and so we're not going to take it up quite just yet. But bigger deals than that, first and foremost, is the weather is terrible. It's been snowing a lot, it's been really cold, and the last thing I want is to take it out and then have to re-winterize it, or I would risk cracking the block again. So we're going to go ahead and avoid that, wait for the weather to get a little bit nicer. And I didn't get the title for the trailer when I bought the boat. So that was pretty stupid of me. That was definitely my fault. So I have to deal with the DMV. It's from a different state, so it's going to be a bit of a headache, but I think we're going to be all right. And regardless, I can buy trip permits. So it's $30 for 3 days out on the road, so I think it'll be okay. But we're real close, and we definitely have a boat now. So when the weather gets a little bit nicer, I'll take it out onto the water. I'll putt around a little bit and see what that thing can really do. But anyways, thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and thanks always for doing your part to help make this world a strange place. I know sometimes you guys see me do some pretty ridiculous stuff on this channel, but there's one thing I want to bring up is whenever you see me working around gasoline, I always have a fire extinguisher that's rated for putting out gasoline fires. That's a really big deal, and you definitely want to exercise common sense because gasoline is extremely dangerous stuff and it can ruin your day and your life, so be extra careful. Also, if you're not real experienced around wiring, you definitely want to exercise the same caution, and it's worthwhile to go seek somebody out who knows what they're doing, and they'll be able to help you be a little bit more safe when you're messing around with stuff like this.